All right, Tex Martini here, straight from WonderCon with the creators of Yakuza Rising. Good book, check it out. So, whose idea was this?
I think it was a joint idea, really, between myself and Kenny, and it's sort of the story of ourselves in a weird, violent kind of way. It's a cross-cultural story about a young man who is half Japanese and half American, and then he gets lured into what is the family business. And he's basically a fish out of water. He doesn't necessarily fit into either culture 100%, and he's just trying to find his way in the world. And I think that relates to all of us.
All right. So since this is a joint idea, how long was the development process, or was this immediate?
It was a little rough in the beginning just to start it off because we have other jobs to do, but when it started rolling, his idea was so well thought out. We were both really inspired to do. We just rolled with it from there.
All right. So, how long did it take to release the first issue?
Patricia started with the story, so she can help describe.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Describe that part about the story. So
honestly, it took us a while to hammer out the basic storyline. Maybe about a year, really, to get it right. But the way that we worked, we had all the story points agreed upon before we really started on the script and before Kenny started on the artwork. And I think we make a really good team because if one person has a better idea, we just build on it in a collaborative manner. It's not, oh my God, you suck, you're not supposed to do this part of it, this is my job. It's more, hey, wouldn't it be cool if? And then the other person says, yeah, and then if. And then the other person says, and then they could, such and such. And so it's been building like this, I'd say a year to get onto the first issue, and we've pretty much hammered out the basic story points for finishing the cycle, and now I just need to work on those scripts.
So how long do you plan for the series to run?
The initial cycle should be for 4 issues, and the way we've structured the story, after that initial cycle happens, we have like hundreds of ideas as to where it can go. So we're hoping to keep it an ongoing story with various cycles, almost like a TV season where you have like 10 episodes or 10 issues, something like that. And so you build upon the new big bad of the cycle.
So as writers and artists, like who do you consider your inspirations?
Gosh, why don't you have Kenny answer that one first for art, and then I'll go back to you on the words.
All right.
Okay, so a lot of comments what I've been getting for the Yakuza is it looks very watercolory. It has a lot of brush style to it, and that wasn't done by accident. That was on purpose, because that's where my main influence is, because this is about Japanese gangsters, so I took a lot of Japanese artist influence. So I researched a lot of that, and a lot of also from my own childhood, reading those comics growing up. So a lot of old classic mangas, other Asian comic books, so stuff like that.
All right. Writers?
I hate to sound too academic, but I'd say a lot of the influences are just sort of classic stories. I mean, obvious one is Godfather, just for basic crime structure, but some of my favorite writers, got to give props to Noel Hines, who does sort of spy stories. Hey, but it's true, because you want to take what, I guess, the structure or the inspiration from stuff you've read before and put your own stamp on it. So I would say some of my other favorite writers might be Len Dayton. Let's see. Gosh, you kind of stumped me with this one, because there's so much stuff out there that I've read that I love, that I would love to emulate, and it's like, I don't quite have that strength or the passion for that particular area. But I was just talking to Kenny about Robert Lynn Aspirin. That's like fun stuff. I want to be able to write something fun, so if I can read something fun, that's an inspiration.
So as a writer, how would you define your style?
I would say American, and by that I think Irish writing would be a little flowery, and I don't mean that in a fluffy way. I mean just sort of florid. It's organic and it blooms and blossoms. British would be very sort of stiff upper lip. Japanese, I think, is almost a little weird in that you can go off on some weird story tangents, and it's the essence of the story, not necessarily the plot that drives it. But American is sort of to the point, which I'm not right now, but to the point and sort of based in action. So the hero wants to do something. The hero tries to act towards something. So I think my style is just American.
All right. Now, as an artist, what's your style?
My style. I try. It depends really on the project. Like this project called for a more realistic approach to it. Like I thought it'd be cooler. The story would have more weight if it looked more realistic. So I tried to make the characters more realistic in a sense. So the proportions they actually look human, like someone you would see off the street. But normally when I draw, it's more of a mixture between a stylized, where they look kind of real, but they have exaggerated features, more angular, something like that.
Have you tried any other styles working for this project? Like, or were you just straight up the one style that we have now?
This is the one right now.
All right.
Yeah.
What other projects have you worked on, if any?
I've been working, actually, well, none for Red Cat, but we are thinking about another project.
Can you give us a hint?
And can we, Patricia?
Honestly, it takes so long to develop stories. It's one of the challenges that I think all creators have. You have so much going on up here in just a limited amount of time. And I'd rather not say what the other story is because we need to focus our passion on this one right now. And if the way we operate, we'll start talking about the other story and say, oh, wouldn't it be cool if? And then we get totally distracted. And we want to finish the full cycle here first.
That's actually my style as well as a writer. I actually have a lot of great ideas, and I want to focus on one project, because as a kid in high school, I would take on multiple projects, and I would never get anything done.
Yes.
You know, so
That's
it's like I limit myself to one project. Unfortunately, I broke my golden rule, because I'm working on 2 projects right now. But it's so cool!
Yeah, and that's, I think, the most important thing is to, and it's difficult, maintain the enthusiasm throughout. And I think readers can catch on if a writer, an artist, a creator of any form sort of tires of whatever he or she is working on. Audiences are smart. They notice that, they feel it, and then they abandon looking at or observing or purchasing or just locking on to your creation.
All right. So what's the comic book process about? Like, how do you start and finish it? So describe a little bit of the process.
Well, I think everyone's process can be a little different. Ours was blessed, for lack of a better term, in that we work well together. And the idea, I mentioned the process a little bit in that I would come up with a story point, or Kenny would come up with a story point. The other person would then build on that with, wouldn't it be cool? And there's a lot of back and forth. And so we would come up with a story, shape it. I might do a draft, send it to Kenny, get comments back, rework it. And when we had a finished script, a lot of writers I've heard could be a little bit more restrictive in the descriptions of the artwork. And while each of us had an idea of what the artwork should look like generally in a panel, that's not my forte. The artist, he has a really good idea. He's got the talent, and he's got much more visual smarts than I do. So if Kenny says, that would be great, but the way I imagine it is such and such, and the character should be aimed this way, I would then adjust. And so, again, it's a collaborative process.
So are you two in close proximity to each other? Like,
Yeah.
you're nearby?
Yes.
Because with me and my editor, we're about 30 miles apart, and I got to tell you, it's killer just to get footage up to her and back most days.
I can understand that, but thankfully with the internet, it gets a little bit easier. I'm not saying it's easy. It's just a little bit easier. Because then at least you can send it and do the feedback in person.
Right.
And I think to some extent getting the feedback in person is really important because it's so easy to misinterpret the tone of something if you're just emailing. But there's an advantage to being able to talk out the story points or the reaction to the first draft or the second draft or the third draft before you get the final one. Just talking it out in person because there's less room for misinterpretation. It's much easier to confirm that we're both on the same page or the same panel. And again, if you have a good working relationship with your co-creators, that's very important.
Right. So what would you say to anyone who's trying to make their own comic book? What advice would you give?
What advice would I give? If you really want to make a comic book, there's nothing stopping you, especially like Patricia's saying now with the technology. It's all out there. It's all available. I would say just pencil and paper. Don't stop until it's finished.
All right. What about you?
I would echo that sentiment of don't stop until you finish. I would also add that don't worry about your first draft. That's always the hardest, whether it's an artistic first draft or written first draft. What I call that first moment of putting something on paper or on screen, it's dribble, it's spew, it is, in no way should anyone judge you on that spew. Put it out there, afterwards, clean it up.
All right. So we all want to know, when's Yakuza Rising, the second issue, coming out?
Not this Comic-Con, but by next Comic-Con, we really hope to have the entire first cycle done.
Would you think of doing live action or animation?
Absolutely. One of the things about this particular story is I think it's very contemporary, and because we're talking about cross cultures, mixing cultures, people going overseas, not knowing the language, I think that's a theme that resonates pretty much with everybody. I mean, you go someplace new, you don't know where to go, what to do, how to get what you think you want. So doing something live action or animated, telling this story, I think just resonates and might make it hit home for some people who don't have the ability to wait until next Comic-Con to read.
So is it in the process of being produced, or do you have a studio in mind?
I shouldn't say, but we'd love to get it produced. So.
All right. Do you have any words for your fans, including myself, just in general?
Well, thank you for all the support. It really is inspiring to see fans come up and say, wow, really like the artwork, really like the story. Because that's cool. Like, that's why we do it. 'Cause I like what I'm doing, and I like seeing other people enjoy what I put out there. So it's a rewarding process. Thank you.
And you, to the fans?
Again, I would say thank you. And one of the great things about Comic-Con and WonderCon is when people come up and say, hey, this is really great, I like it. I have some great ideas too. Honestly, go out there and do it. It's so hard to go out there and do it, but it's so inspiring. And hearing other people say, hey, I've got this idea, I've started it, we're all in this together. So go on, finish it. And that's for me and for everybody out there.
All right. And, as an artist myself, you all inspire me. Your artwork inspires me. Your writing inspires me. Like, it drives me to do what I do. And I agree with you. Part of the reason what I do is I may not get any views, many as such, but I love doing it. Just for that one fan to say, hey, we saw your video. We like it. Even if it's just a family member. But when someone new says something like, hey, we like it. Or even if they tell me it sucks, completely. At least it's constructive. Yes. Quote-unquote.
Yeah.
Quote-unquote unconstructive part. All right, my friends, Tux Martini, signing out. See you all soon.